creating computes and other things. And at last, let me just share my screen first. So we were on, yeah, this one. Can you guys see my screen? Can you quickly put it in the chat? Like anybody of you? Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so we had already, we were done with this Azure lab where we had to implement an Azure function, and we created firstly a function app, which is actually the parent, like within a function app, you have various functions. So the first task was to create a function app, and then within that, we created an HTTP triggered event function app, and we also tested that function app. Okay, after this, you within Azure, you also have various DevOps and repository services. So GitHub is also now being bought. It has been bought by Microsoft, so they are also integrating those things. And prior to this, they already have Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps is like a collaboration tool where you can have your build and release pipelines, your Kanban boards and your agile boards where you can plan your project management task also. And if you want to have CI pipelines like code integration, base load testing pipeline, so you can also have that. GitHub, I guess most of you would be aware that it's a software development hosting with the version control solution where you can do code management, bug task management, all of these things. Now there is something new that has come to GitHub recently, which is known as GitHub Actions, and within that there are GitHub Actions for Azure, using which you can actually automate software workflows for like build, test, and deploy from within your GitHub repository itself. And then there is a service which is known as Azure Dev Test Labs. So basically, what this service does is you can quickly create environments in Azure for your testing purposes. So if you have like 10 developers, so they can quickly spin up virtual machines which will have some sort of pre-installed image, and maybe as managers or maybe as admins, you can limit what all services, which type of virtual machine they can spin up. You can also store different images of virtual machines so that they can directly work in. And it does not take so when we were provisioning VMs, usually it would take 5 or 10 minutes, but in Azure Dev Test Lab, it is not the case. You instantly have virtual machines available for people to use it for testing or their development activities. So it both minimizes the waste also, and it controls the cost also. Okay, then next part is around Azure management tools. So within Azure, there are various management tools like Portal, PowerShell, CLI, and other things. So we'll see them in details. So some of the major management tools that are available are firstly your Azure portal itself. So the portal that we were going through. So using that portal, a complete web app sort of an interface is provided, which you can use for provisioning your resources. And then you have Azure PowerShell, which is similar to PowerShell. Like if you come from a Windows administration background, so you would have used PowerShell and you would prefer it anytime. There is an Azure mobile app also where which has limited features, but still it is there where you can monitor your service health and other things. Then for your cross-platform solution, so obviously your Azure PowerShell will run inside your Windows PowerShell. But there is a CLI, Azure CLI, which is provided, which you can use for cross. If you're working on a Mac system and you want to like uh, uh, control or manage your Azure infrastructure, you can install the Azure CLI for Mac OS and you can start working there also. Okay, all of these things, obviously behind the scene, there are some REST APIs which are written, which are used by both your PowerShell CLI in your Azure portal or your Azure mobile app. So you can directly use the Azure REST API. And within Azure portal, there is an Azure Cloud Shell also. So I'll show that which Cloud Shell is there. So there you have both the CLI as well as the PowerShell installed. Okay, together, ultimately, all of these management tools will communicate with your Azure Resource Manager. And there are some templates which this Azure Resource Manager will decode for them, will decode actually, and then they will decode for it, and it is basically used for all your management related tasks and provisioning and other things. Okay, now we'll create an VM template from an ARM template. So this is a template that you get using which you can basically provision any of the services that are out there. And if there are these are freely available in your marketplaces also, which using which you can quickly spin up resources. So let me go to the yeah. So let me see if there are any questions. No questions. Okay, so this is the lab we will start doing. So for that, there is a you can directly go to this resource templates, this URL. Here you will get a lot. You can directly search for your different ARM templates, and whichever template you suits your purpose, you can directly use that template for deployment and other things. Deploy a simple VM. So you can see so this template I will deploy this template. So this what this will do, this will simply deploy a simple Windows virtual machine in your cloud. And after this, you have to click on deploy to Azure. It will take you to your Azure portal. Just sign into the portal. Okay, now you can see that these are all the parameter. This is a parameterized template that is there. So you can just quickly fill out all the things that are necessary, and you can just simply provision the resource for you. So I'll choose my subscription, and I'll choose the resource group in which I need to deploy this thing. And it has automatically picked what is the location of the resource group. I'll give this a username password. Okay. So no need to read password and all of those things. So it is automatically configured in such a way. And now you can also you can actually edit the template also, suiting to your need. Once you move to more uh, once you will understand this language better, you will be able to do this also. So within this you can see all of these parameters and everything is given. So maybe I want to change this particular parameter. uh, I will change this default value to something else, maybe my VM ARM template. So I'll just save it. So you'll see that it has quickly it has changed the VM name also here, the one that we have mentioned there. And yeah, so now I'll just click on review and create. Let it the ARM, your Azure Resource Manager is basically validating all of these things, and all you will have to do is to click on create. It will create all the resources for you, and it is comparatively much easier than like going through the entire process. Additionally, what you can have ARM templates which can deploy all the multiple resources together. So most of the time, if you create any application, you will have a database, you will have some Azure functions, all of them together. If you want to deploy, you can actually create an ARM template for them. So what will happen? All the resources will have a single life cycle. So they'll be deployed through that ARM template, and then they will, you can also in one go you can also delete them also. So but if you would have been doing this through the portal, the thing would be you will first have to uh, create individual resources, validate yourself that you did not miss out any part. And in ARM template, you can also set dependencies and these things that first your DB should be created and then your maybe Azure function should be created, so that some sort of a dependency is there. Otherwise, which you would have to manually do it yourself. Okay. So let this get deployed. Okay, so this is deployed. Yeah, so you can see that um, all of these things have been created. And if I go to the virtual machines, this is my virtual machine that has been created. So you can just like yesterday, you can just download this RDP file and you can log into this virtual machine. Okay. So I guess you guys must be familiar with this that thing now. Let me quickly do that. Yeah, so you can see that using this template also we were able to deploy these resources. Additionally, you can also do it uh, with your PowerShell and your Azure CLI. So those instructions are there in that lab link that I have showed. So because we have already done it through the ARM template, I'm not showing you that part, but it can also be done through PowerShell as well as Azure CLI. Okay, let me just close this one now. Yeah, so this VM has been created. Uh, let me just stop it for now so that it does not incur any additional cost. Okay, after that you have an Azure Advisor, which is basically used to analyze all your deployed Azure resources. And if there will be any recommendation from a side, it will tell you what is the best practice based upon reliability, security, performance, cost, and operational excellence. So currently, because we have very limited resources deployed uh, in our resource group, so we won't have it. But if you have a very vast infrastructure, then you will have what all based upon high availability, what all four recommendation are there. If there is any, what is the level of impact currently that is there, and how many number of resources are being impacted. Then it will also assess your security. It will tell you what are the high impacts, low, medium, and these sorts of impacts, which using which you can actually you can decide that. And then related to operational excellence, that if there is good any good operational process, it will suggest you. And where and all you can actually save your cost also. It will, so it is sort of an advisor which has some rule set which it will apply to your environment, and it will show you this dashboard way of analyzing these things. Okay, then in management tools, you have Azure Monitor. So Azure Monitor, this is basically there to maximize your availability and performance of your application. So what basically it does is it will collect and analyze all your telemetry logs and from your cloud sources as well as your on-prem environment. So on cloud, you have application insights where all your uh, all your application data flow into it. And then there is one more service that is known as log analytics. So all your logs and telemetric log will flow into log analytics if you connect your resources. And you can also query your logs and in a very meaningful manner, and You can also create dashboards and chart based upon those queries. So that could be that is all done through log analytics. Then creating customized dashboard, automation action, and smart alerts are also there with your Azure Monitor. So this service is basically for your analyzing, collecting on all your telemetry data and log management sort of way. Okay, then comes Azure Service Health. So this will basically like evaluate the impact of your Azure services. If there are any issues that any of the services are being facing, so it will tell you that uh, what which all services have been impacted and what is the service health and if there is any resolution that is there, so it will also provide you with the resolution updates also. So here you can see what are the impacted subscription. uh, if a service is down in more than one subscription, it will list down all the subscription which have been impacted, and then it will also show you any resolution updates that are there, that what all other customers are facing, and you can also request for root cause and different sort of analysis also. Okay, it will also give you a personalized view of the health of Azure services and the regions being used, like if there is any outages and if there are any planned maintenance at Azure site, it will give you all those details, and any other health advisory, basically which all services it is. This is how it looks like. So it will tell you that this like express route and express route circuits are impacted, and what is the resolve time, what is the start time, last update time, and what are the impacted subscription that is there. So it will give you that personalized view of the uh, Azure different services, and what is their current health status. Okay, ARM template we have already seen. We already just deployed it. So whenever you basically, firstly, Azure ARM templates are just like your JSON files, which are basically used to create and deploy Azure infrastructure, and you don't have to write any programming codes also here. So it's just like a declarative language syntax that they have created, and it looks like completely JSON, and within the JSON also you'll have some links to REST APIs and some URLs which will be used. So the main benefit of ARM template is, firstly, it's a no code. It does not require any programming language to deploy your resources. Then you can actually it is sort of a code, so you can always keep them in any repositories. And additionally, the major benefit of this thing, you can have maybe if you have 10 different Azure services, you can actually club them together based upon an application. So if you have an application that requires 10 services to be deployed in maybe some sequence order, so you can create a single ARM template for all of them, and deploy those uh, uh, deploy those resources in that manner with the dependency and other thing. So yeah, so no doubt it will give you the repeatable results. So every time you can be sure that if you are deploying any ARM template, you will have repeatable results. So no chances of manual error or anything. And then uh, you have modular files. It has built-in validation and other things, and it can be exported as a code also. Okay, guys. So we are done with module 3. Let me check if there are any questions. Okay, none so far. So let's start with module 4. Okay, module 4 is around security. So first we'll see uh, there are some within your Azure portal, you have the security center, and it gives you all the resource hygiene. Then there are some specific service like Key Vault. So this is a very famous service where it does all your secret management task, and it is almost linked to all the Azure services. So like somebody told me that they are working with Azure Data Factory. So I guess most of the time, if you in your Azure Data Factory, if you're dealing with any secrets, you get your secrets from your Azure Key Vaults and these services. Then they also provide connectivity with Synapse, which is the main analytics product, and for with third-party products also known as Azure Databricks. So it has very good like connectivity, like linkage with other Azure services. Basically, it is used for your secret management and access secret management. Sentinel is we'll see that it is on a high level, it is a way to monitor your environment and other dedicated host also. Then we'll come to Azure network security. So we'll see that how using NSGs and firewall you can protect your environment and DDoS. This is a very famous attack these days where your hackers they will actually pretend they will try to they will try to bring malicious traffic, and that traffic actually looks like normal traffic, but what it will do, your service and all of these things will restart because they will push so many requests in one go to the server won't be able to handle that load and it will restart. So there are services outage because of these things. So there is DDoS protection also in Azure. Okay, so first is your Azure Security Center. In your Azure Security Center, it's an monitoring service that provides you threat protection across both Azure and on-premises data centers. And so it will basically give you, it is just like other services that we were seeing. Azure Advisor was more from an a- uh, entire Azure perspective, similar to for security, they have created Azure Security Center, which is more focused towards your security. So it will give you security recommendation, and if it detects and if it will detect any malware or anything, it will try to block it also, and then it will analyze your potential traffics and attacks that anybody is trying in your Azure infrastructure. Okay, so let me show you the security. Yeah, so this is how your security it looks like. What is the conditional access and if there are any insights and reporting that is there. So currently I'm not the Azure AD. Uh, it's not linked to your log analytics, so you're not seeing any insights and reporting. Otherwise, it will show you all the diagnostic and any problems that are there. So it will do all of these things for you. So this is very like from a security perspective, it is very it is a very good tool. Okay, you can see here all the sign in logins at what location and everything, where and all people are actually signing in, and what is the authentication mechanism they are using. So because I'm logging it into uh, my email ID, so it most of the time it is single factor authentication. But through your AAD, your Active Directory, you can actually enforce multi-factor authentication also. So all of those details will be there, whether those application, how they are logging in, and all of these things. So you can find it in the security center. Okay, so currently because we don't have much of the resources, so we cannot see all of the secure SOAR and alerts and other things. So basically it is used for policy compliance. So if you have any management groups, subscriptions or tenants, so you can actually run policies over these groups using which it will assess your environment, and it's a continuous assessment it is a sort of a continuous assessment where any new or old deployed resource you can ensure that they are working configured properly or not. Then you have tailored recommendations from their side that based upon all the existing things that you are using, how you should implement them. And it has built-in threat protection also. So if it will analyze any attempted threats that were there through alert, and it will actually it will tell you all the impacted resources and give you in a report format also. Okay, Azure Sentinel is a security information management and automated security solution that provides you both security analytics and threat intelligence across your enterprise. And additionally, the one benefit it has that it can be connected to your Office 365, your Azure Active Directory. So any if anybody is trying to hack into your Azure Directory, so there are connectors for that also. And then it can be integrated with other Microsoft thing also. So it can do all of this thing. It can collect where security data across your enterprise. Then if there is any threat, or like they have any machine learning models and this thing that they have trained on, so it will also flag any malicious attempt that you see. Then using this you can investigate any critical incidents which are like guided by AI and other things which are basically trained by Microsoft. And then based upon all of these things you can also uh, you can automate protection also through different rules or engines in Azure Sentinel. Okay, this is a very popular service, and we'll see a lab for this also. So Azure Key Vault is basically it will store all your application secrets in a centralized cloud location. So what will happen? There will be a single cloud location, and there will be a URL through which you can access your secrets. So what you can do, you can link all your applications to Azure Key Vault and keep all your secrets there. Now, anytime assume that your DB passwords are there, which is used by 10 applications. Now, suddenly, and most of the time, you will have to rotate your DB password also, like every 1 month or 2 months. So instead of going back, if you were keeping our secrets at like 10 different location for our 10 different apps, then we will have to go and update go and update that password at 10 different location. So instead of that, it is better that you update all your applications are actually getting your secrets from the key vault, and there is a single place where you can update your passwords. Then automatically that new password will get reflected in all the 10 applications that are using that database. So it has secret management, key management, and certificate management. And then there are some hardware security modules also, which using which you can actually store secrets. Okay, so let us move to this lab. Yeah, so here it is. So in your Azure portal, the first thing that you have to do is you have to search for Key Vault, and then we will create a new Key Vault in the resource group. Oh shit. Keywords, I'll click on create. I'll give this a unique name. Okay, so after this, we have to make no other configurations, and we can simply review and create the resource. And then I will show you in the overview and vault where you can see the vault URI, which you can directly embed in your REST APIs in order to work with that. So let me first create the key vault. Yeah, so the validation is passed. Let me click on create, and let's create the key vault first. It has created the resource now. Let's go to the resource. Okay, after this, what we have to do, I'll show you the vault URI, and so within that you can have both secrets, keys and secrets and certificates, all of these things at a single location you can actually manage. Okay, so this is your vault URI which you can directly use in your REST APIs, and then in settings you can see you can have keys, you can have secrets, you can have certificates all at single location. So you can upload all the certificate and other things. Okay, the first thing that we have to actually create a new secret. We will add a new secret here. So let me assume that it is some sort of a password which we are trying to create. So I'll just click on secrets, and I'll this upload option will be manual only. I'll give this secret a name, and let me take this value only from here. Okay, and then these content type and other things are optional. So maybe JSON or different content, there is no need to set them. These are optional. And if you want to start, you can set a activation date for this secret also. So currently we don't want to do it, and you can set the expiration date also. Like if you want, maybe it's a DB password, you want after 3 months it automatically gets expired. So you can just set the expiration date itself here, but we don't have to do that. So, and you can enable or disable a secret also. So we'll keep it in enabled state for now. Let me click on create, and okay, so it has created a new secret for me. So this is the secret, and it is currently also in an enabled state. Okay, post this, what we have to do is we will actually go inside the we will actually go inside the secret, and we will note the secret identifier for this particular uh, secret identifier for this particular secret. So you can see this is the secret, and this is the exact whole URL through which you can actually get this secret. And you can also show the secret value. So this was the value that that we had actually stored. So in your industry, what will happen, your DevOps or maybe your administrator, instead of directly sharing passwords with you, they will share you maybe Key Vault. They will give you this secret identifiers from Key Vault or other things, and from there you can actually access your secrets. So all of the application will be getting the secrets from a single location, and whenever they will have to rotate them, and they can directly rotate it at a single place, and it will automatically reflect at all the other places. Okay, Jayant, it says no. It's sometimes it totally depends upon your industry practice. So usually it will depend on the project. So maybe for every project we have a different key vault, and if an organization is managing all their secrets at a single location, uh, it is not advised. So maybe somebody if goes ahead and deletes your key vault, all your application would be affected. So somewhere most of the time you will see there are key vaults specific to a particular project which you are working in. uh, I guess that answers your question. Okay, thank you. So it is more it is a more human and design call that how do you want to keep it, but like keeping them differently would be better, like based upon a project, like this is how I will design my system. Okay, so we are done with this demo. So we created an Azure Key Vault and we have also added a secret in the Azure Key Vault. Okay, now you have Azure dedicated host, so it provides you actually proper physical servers that where you can host one or more Azure virtual machine that is dedicated to a single organization workload. Now, the benefit of this thing is that you get hardware isolation at the server level itself. And then you can, like I have told you once, that you can also bring your licenses and other things to your cloud itself, and which is known as Azure Hybrid Benefit. So if you have Windows license, you can directly use it with the dedicated host, and then you won't incur any uh, additional charges also for that. Okay, next part is around your securing your network. So just like if you would have seen that we had created two virtual machine, kept them in a particular environment, virtual private network. So and then disabled all the connection from the outside world. So only the virtual machine within the virtual network will be able to communicate with each other. Okay, so let us go into that. So firstly, if you say that this is defense in depth, so firstly will be the so at last you have data, you have data, then you have applications, then you have to protect your compute network, then your entire perimeter, then you have to define your who like IAM roles, so identity and access management. At last it comes your physical security, so you have to protect your data center and other you have to actually protect your data center. So your physical security layer is the first line of defense. So obviously will first have to protect your uh, like protect your data center itself, because if you cannot protect it, obviously these things will be affected. Now then comes your identity and access layer, which control access to infrastructure and change control. Perimeter layer is it's like it's mostly for your DDoS protection to filter large scale attacks before they can even cause these things. Then comes your network layer. So it will mostly what we do, we try to limit communication between resources through segmentation and access control. And then your compute. So like you secure your access to virtual machines, and for application you ensure that the applications are secure and free of any security vulnerability. And at last you have the data layer, which you where you control access to business and customer data that you need to that is actually needed for you to protect. Okay, then we then comes the concept of shared security. So we have seen this shared responsibility model. So in on premises, everything the entire security is managed by the customer only. But in cloud computing model, if you see from IaaS and PaaS, depending upon what type of service you are provisioning. So if you assume that if you have provisioned a virtual machine, then your physical host, physical network, and physical data center is actually protected by Microsoft for you. But going like if protecting your operating system, network control, application, IAM, and directory access, all that security you have to manage. Now for PaaS services, what happens? that even the operating system update, patching, and everything is taken care by Microsoft. But if you are developing any application, so there will be two application. One will be the application that Microsoft might be creating behind the scene in order to build that patch service. And over that, obviously, your as a customer, you are also building your code. So you will have to protect the application also. So that is a shared responsibility between you guys. And IAM and directory infrastructure is also a shared responsibility, and network control. So what who are you allowing your services to, and micro Azure is also protecting your network, so it is a shared responsibility between you guys. In SaaS, it is basically your data governance and endpoints and access management that is the responsibility of customer. Apart from that, the application, because obviously you cannot protect if you're using Outlook, that entire application is protected by Microsoft only, because that's a SaaS service. And anything below that is also is the responsibility of the vendor that is providing the SAP service. Okay, identity and directory infrastructure like Active Directory and who is accessing your Outlook, that is a shared responsibility. Both Microsoft and yet the customer is uh, responsible in ensuring that security. Okay, then comes your network security group. So NSGs are basically there to filter any network traffic to and from Azure resources to your Azure virtual networks. So most of the time, the issues that you get whenever you are working with any protocol is these how to tell, these hackers will try to target any port or specific ports which will be maybe open through some service, and then they will try to expose, maybe try to connect to that port. And if they are able to go through that port, they will try to build they will try to maybe plant backdoors and all of those things. So first thing is to set inbound and outbound rules to filter your source and destination IP addresses. Now what will happen if you limit your inbound ports? So if you say that uh, I will only open RDP 3389 port, apart from RDP 3389 port, none of the port will be open. So even if somebody tries to attack a different port, because you are actually restricting the connection itself, your system will not be affected. Similar is for outbound rules. So maybe what you can do, you can provision a VM, and you can even restrict the access to internet. So if a VM is just used for development purpose, there is no point in allowing internet and these things also. So you can apply those outbound rules also there. In our labs, we'll see this thing. And you can set multiple rules depending upon your subscription limit. And there are some default and baseline security rules that are allowed by Azure by default, but you can override them obviously by giving a high priority rule. So we will do this thing in the lab, then it will be more clear. Okay, Azure Firewall. It is just like a firewall as a service that it will, whether you have to grant or deny a server access based upon anybody's originating IP address. So they have created a service for that also, which is known as Azure Firewall. This is basically there to protect your network resources. So if you apply any inbound, outbound traffic filtering rules, so it will do that. And it already has built-in high availability and scalability is there with it. And it is basically linked with your Azure Monitor logging. So it is connected with Azure Monitor, where you can see an holistic view of what all logs and other things that are happening. Okay, there is a service which is known as Azure Application Gateway, but that provides a web application firewall, and which is more which is centralized and inbound protection for your web application. So that is specific to your web application only. Azure Firewall is more it is more specific to your servers and other other places. Then you Azure is also built in because obviously Azure itself is a portal. So uh, let me see if there are any questions. Okay, so no questions as of now. So like I've already told you that what is a DDoS attack, and it is basically like it is written that it is used to overwhelm and exhaust your network resources. So what will happen the moment your network resources are uh, exhausted? Your application will be slow and unresponsive, and most of the 9 out of 10 times your DDoS attacks uh, will be done hackers will do it, and there is no protection for this. There is no legitimate way of finding that uh, whether a hacker is doing it or uh, somebody is actually suddenly there is a such a high increase in your traffic. So for that they have built some solution which is known as Azure distributed denial of service protection, where if there is any unwanted network traffic that they detect from a single IP, they will automatically filter that out for you. So that will not impact any service availability. And so basic service tier is automatically enabled in Azure, so it is there for everything. For standard tiers, there are some additional mitigation capabilities that are basically tuned for your environment. Okay, so maybe I don't think so you guys would be working with these services, because this is mostly done at an organizational level, and your subscription admin or your Active Directory admins will be taking care of these things. Okay, now what we do, so we combine both NSGs with Azure Firewall to achieve your like defense in depth. Then for your perimeter layer protects your network boundaries, and your DDoS protection also protects your perimeter layer. So DDoS is protected by Azure DDoS protection. And your networking layer will what it will do, it will only permit traffic to pass like for only those ports where you have specified an inbound or outbound rule. So your networking layer all it will be actually dealt with your network security groups using your NSGs. Okay, let us go to the secure network traffic lab. Yeah, so this is the lab secure network traffic. So in this, what we have to do first, we will create a virtual machine, but we will not attach network security group to this machine in the starting. And later on, what we will do, we will create a new network security group, and then specify an inbound and outbound rule, and check whether we are able to access our machine or not. So first task is to create a virtual machine. So we have already done it. So let me quickly. So we'll choose a Windows machine for this, and let me just get. This is the resource group I'll choose. I'll give this virtual machine. Okay, not. I'm given this name my VM NSG, and I need no infrastructure redundancy. Let me use the username and Okay, but if you see that this time, na, I won't allow any inbound ports at the time of creating the virtual machine. So uh, I will just simply use none. I need no public inbound ports to be open for this machine, not even the RDP port. Okay. So after this, I'll show that in the lab also. So you can see that we have disabled any inbound port, and in the networking thing also, we won't use any NSGs as of now. We will create an NSG and then attach it to it. Yeah, so you can see because there we have not allowed any NSGs to be open, so it is already set to none. And in management also, we'll disable boot diagnostic and these things. And let me click on review and create. After this, we'll create a network security group, and then apply an inbound rule to this to that NSG, attach that NSG to this virtual machine, and then we'll see how whether whatever the rules that we have set, whether we are trying to, whether it is implemented in the virtual machine or not. So it is still creating. Yeah. So now this has been created. Let me go to the resource. Yeah, in the networking section also, you will see that. Okay, so yeah, NSGs. Yeah, now I'll create a new network security group. I'll simply click on review and create. So it is creating an NSG. After that, we will first. So it is still creating. Still, yeah. Okay, so RNSG has been deployed. So you can see that you have inbound and outbound rules also here, which you can basically you can actually set those inbound and outbound rule. So let me go back to the app. Now I will associate my NSG with this particular the VM that I had created. Yeah, so this is the VM that I created. In this, okay, so it has already linked to an NSG here. Okay, now we will have to create a new virtual machine again. Okay, but we can see this thing. So if you see this inbound rules, okay, it was there in the subnet. Okay, so my bad. It has created an NSG now. We can, if we create a new virtual machine, we can have a new NSG there also. So now what we will do, first let's connect to this virtual machine and see whether we are able to do that thing or not. Okay, so because in NSG, this in the default NSG that was created, so the RDP port was enabled. But now what I will go simply go and have a rule set within higher priority, which will actually disallow that thing. So we are able to connect this time. Let me go to the networking part. Yeah, so I will disallow this port. So instead of allow, I will use deny. And if you see the priority of this thing, I will set to a uh, priority greater than the default priority that is there. So 1000 is a default, is a priority for 3389 port. And now what I've created an inbound rule to deny 3389 port from any protocol or any place. So let me just apply this thing. So it is creating a new security rule. Let me just refresh it. Will then we will be able to see that. Okay, you can see that I have a rule uh, that is actually denying this thing. So let us again try it using RDP, whether we are able to connect or not. Okay, so you can see that this time it's not allowing me to actually connect to the system. And because what I've done, I've actually added an SD rule to actually restrict entry to from port 3389. Okay, that is why it is not enabled for this thing. Additionally, what all I can also do, uh, like for inbound rule, you can see that we can enable or disable it. For outbound also, what we can do, I was able to from the virtual machine, I'll show that I was able to access the internet. First, let me delete this rule. Okay, this rule is deleted. So this time it should allow me to enter into the virtual machine. Guys, after this lab, we'll have a 15 minutes break, okay? Okay, I guess it's taking some time to reflect that energy. Let me refresh. Let me download the RDP file again. Yeah, I guess Jayant, I also I might have screwed up somewhere. Uh, because I had already chosen none there. It should not have been in that inbound rule itself. Uh, Maybe I messed up somewhere. Maybe that my bad. But the lab, if you'll see, this is only what they are trying to tell you, that how you can restrict and how you can restrict inbound as well as outbound. Okay. Maybe I'm looking for some other VM also. I might have made that mistake. It should connect now. Okay, yeah. So finally, yeah, it connected. Okay, guys. So you can see that I was able to connect, and internet also I'll be able to access. But then I'll have an outbound rule, which will restrict that thing also. Let me, yes. So, uh, okay, so you can see that I'm able to access the internet. And now let me create an outbound rule. And yeah, so for outbound, just like an inbound, you have to go into networking and outbound port rule. You will see that there is by default they add one. Uh, by default they will add a rule to allow internet. But what we will do, we will actually deny that thing. Okay. So there is a destination in service stack and internet using which you can actually uh, disallow that thing. So in your networking, in your outbound port rules, I will add a new outbound rule. There is one for where is that? Okay, service. It is under service. Yeah, destination is service tag. Yeah, service tag. Yeah, for internet, this is a service tag, and then we have to like you can restrict for TCP protocol only, and you will have to all you will have to do is set a priority which is higher than the default rule that was set. And I'll do deny. It's using 100. That will also work, but let's go with the lab. And yeah, let me add this thing. Okay, let me refresh. Okay, so you can see that this time that we have for internet there was a default rule that was applied, which was actually allowing this thing, and we have created a rule which is denying this thing, so it has a higher priority. So now we should not be able to access the internet. Let me check whether we are able to do it. Okay, we are still able to do it. Let me try to search something. It will usually take some time to like okay, it's allowing me. Protocol is I guess everything is correct. Let me just try to log in into the virtual machine again. No, 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 no. You cannot do it for another VM. You will have to do it from that VM's networking track only. So you can see that this time we are not able to access it. So there was, uh, I guess, the security rule was taking some time to affect. So this time we were not able to like access the internet also because we had supplied an NSG which was greater than the default one, and it was stating that don't allow access to internet. Okay, so let me just get out of this VM, and yeah, so this was a part of this exercise, and guys, let's take a break of 15 minutes, and let me have my dinner and I'll be back. Yeah,
This
so let's
conference
start.
will now be recorded.
Okay, so we were on the lab for NSG where we had first we had deployed a virtual machine, and on that virtual machine, after that we had created a network security group, and then we added inbound and outbound rule for your internet access. Yeah, so we are done with this module. Let me start with module 5. Just let me know whether you're able to see my screen. Uh, in the chat, can you anybody can confirm whether you're able to see my screen? Okay, great. Thanks, Jayant. Okay, so module 5 is around identity. Let me get yeah. Module 5 is around identity, governance, privacy, and compliance. So the module outline is, first we'll see identity services like authentication versus authorization, and then what is Azure Active Directory, multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, and conditional access. After that, we will see the RBAC feature, so role-based access control, and how to lock a resource and tags, how to create a policy, blueprints, and other things. And then we have some things regarding Azure privacy and compliance, where you will see privacy statements, online service terms, what are terms. There is a trust center also, and a compliance documentation. And then we'll see Azure sovereign regions also. Okay, first, authentication and authorization is as simple as that. If I give you an example, it's like maybe both you and your when we were kids, maybe we would have got access to some online portal where we can go and check our maybe marks in maths, science, or any subjects. Even our faculty is allowed to do that. So both of us are authenticated to view to get inside the portal. But if there was a student from some other school, he won't be able to go and see our marks, or he won't even have access to the portal itself. So that is the mechanism of authentication, where you identify the person or service seeking to access a resource, and if it is legitimate access credentials are given, then you will be able to authenticate to the service. Now authorization is there. Both you and your faculty were allowed to get inside the portal, but only your faculty is allowed or authorized to change your marks. Okay, so it's as simple as that. So even once you are inside the portal, what what level of authorization you have is what is known as authorization. Okay, Azure multi-factor authentication is nothing but it provides you additional security for your identities by requiring two or more elements of full authentication, like something you know, something you possess, or something you are. So something you know may be username, password. Something you possess could be uh, your your mobile phones and authenticator, and then you can have some certificates or other things which could uh, like tell that who where is this traffic actually coming from. Azure Active Directory is nothing but Microsoft Azure's cloud-based identity and access management service. So the moment you when we log into our Azure portal, and when I'm actually putting down my username and password, this is actually authenticated using Azure Active Directory. And firstly, it provides you the service of authentication. single sign-on. So single sign-on is like through a single identity you are able to log into multiple services, and maybe sometimes you are already authenticated also. Then application management and using AAD only. So if you have set down any if you have set down any permissions, you have they will be automatically applied by the your Active Directory. And then there is business to business, business to customer service identity. So these are different types of service identities that is there. And it also gives you the capability of device management, like whether you have to have other if you have added any additional devices in your network. Okay, conditional access is something where conditional access is actually used by your Azure Active Directory to bring signals together to make decisions and enforce organizational policies. So signals could be that how you maybe whether if you are a user, and if you are a device, maybe you have certain devices that if people access through those devices, you might directly allow their access to the traffic. But maybe if there are some other application which you feel that they are not that secure, what you can do, you can apply a conditional access policy that if I'm getting request from such and such place or such and such location or user, they will have to go through an additional level of verification, like you can enable MFA for them. And last could be that if maybe from certain location or user you want that people, if they are coming from, they should be directly blocked access to your network. So all of these three scenarios could be done using conditional accesses. So you can actually enforce organizational policies on user groups, IP location, device, application, or any risk if it is detected. Okay, so now we'll go to the labs for RBAC. So this is for role-based access control. What happens is everybody, there are some user-defined roles. Sorry, there are some roles that have been defined. So if you are an owner, what level of uh, uh, access you will have. If you are a different, if you are a contributor, what all you can access. So all of these things are actually governed through RBAC rules, and it's like just like your IAM rules, your identity and access management. So that is taken care by your RBAC. So let us go to the lab for that. Yeah, this is the lab for this. So first, what we have to do, we have to create a new resource group. So I'll create a new resource group. Resource group. So I've created a new resource group with this name. Okay, I'll go to this resource group. Here you will find the section of IAM. This is the access control thing. Now, once you're in the IAM, you will you can actually browse through both your role assignments and what are the roles are you're there. You can even view your own accesses also. Okay, so you can also view your own accesses. So because we had created these groups, so they will be already there. So all the accesses. Now next, that what we have to do is we have to add a new role assignment to our particular resource group. I'll click on role assignment. I will add a new role assignment, and here I will choose a, yeah, so I'm not able. Yeah, so here we have to choose this role, virtual machine contributor role. So that is yeah. So this is the role, and next what you have to do, you can assign this role to anybody. So any user, group, or service principal. So you can assign it. Service principal, we have not seen it. It's not part of AZ 900. So these are like service accounts which are created, and groups are like security groups. So instead of having what we do, we create security groups, keep on adding members to that security group, and instead of giving access to the members, we give access to the security groups. So then all we will have to do is add member or delete member from the group, and automatically all the accesses and access and other things will be sorted. Okay, now next thing that we will have to do is and we will actually assign this role to ourselves. So for that, all I have to do is select a member, and yeah, so I'll just, so this is the account that I'm using. I'll just click on select, and I'll click on review and assign. Okay, after this, once you have actually assigned this, so you can see that we are now I can see that there is a new role assignment for virtual machine contributor, and through this role what I will be able to do it, if there is any virtual machine inside this resource group, I will be able to like sorry guys, so if there is any virtual machine inside this resource group, then I will be able to control that, maybe use that virtual machine. Okay, post that what we can do, you can also monitor your role assignment through the activity log. So within the activity log you have different filters through which you can actually detect what type of activities are happening in your resource group. Yeah, you can click on resource, you can click on operations, and okay, let me type role. Yeah, so I'll just filter for both of these roles. It will take some time for this to show up here. Yeah, after that we don't have to do anything. That Apple. Yeah, so you can see that there was a role that was created. So it was initiated by me, and you can see that a new role was created, and this was the role that was given. So the virtual machine contributor role. So if multiple people are using this resource group, then from the activity log you can actually directly get all the details that if there was any new role assignment or not. So that can be easily done through the activity log. So that was a part of this particular lab. Let's move forward. Okay, so for Azure governance, first we will understand what is the functionality and usage of role-based access control. Then to prevent your resources from locking, from deletion, accidental deletion, you can also apply locks on resources on the resource group level. Tags is something that is created in order to just categorize. So it has no technical significance. At the time of creating your resources, what happens is people like to assign some tags, like tagging resource to maybe some project, some company, maybe some sister company that you have, or maybe to a department, so that through this tag later on I'll be able to find all the linked resources and take out what is the cost that I am incurring. Azure policies are they are like some policies that are applied on your subscription level, on your subscription on your resource group. Like if you are creating resource, you will have to mention the tag. So that could be one policy, and there could be n number of policies that you can apply in order to govern your Azure environment. Then there is something that is known as Azure blueprints. We'll see that in the detail. It's mostly like how do you design the entire infrastructure, and then we'll see what is a cloud adoption framework for Azure. Okay, RBAC, like we have already seen, so there is an Azure Active Directory, and there are various subscription. Within those subscription, there are multiple resource group. So there could be a user, or by app we mean a service account only. It's actually known as app registration, and you can create various security groups or user groups. Now, this is basically used to give you very specific fine-grained access management thing, and this basically segregate what is the duty of different team members inside the teams, and it enables access to your Azure portal and controlling access to the resources once you are inside the Azure portal. Resource logs, like I told you, that it protects your Azure resources from accidental deletion or modification, and this is basically you manage logs at subscription, resource group, or individual resource level within the portal. So if you see that log type, so if you apply a cannot delete, so you can read update but you won't be able to delete the resource. And there is a read only resource type also, which you will be only allowed to read, you won't be even allowed to update or delete the resource. But in both of this log type, if there is any log that is applied, for sure you won't be able to delete the resource. Okay, so we have a lab for the manage resource. Let us go to this lab. Mm, yes, so this is the, okay, so let me use this some other resource group where we have some okay, so for this exercise you can have any you can use any resource group. So unnecessarily you do not need to create any new resource group, and after that you have to go inside that resource group. So all this while I was working with the AZ900K21 resource group. Within that there is a, under your settings there is a logs section, and now you can actually add a log, and you can actually define the type of log that is there, whether it's a read only log or it's a delete type of a log. So here what we have to do is we actually went ahead and created we added a log, and we are actually only applying the delete log as of now. We are not applying the read log. So let me add that log. Let me just copy this name. You can mention some notes also if you want. Okay, so we have applied this log. You can see the next thing that I will go ahead. I will go and delete, try to delete this resource group because there is a lock. I won't be able to do this. Yeah, so I have, you have to type the name of the resource group. Okay, so we did apply the lock. We should get an error soon. Okay, so what happened? It's not showing the error also, and so this resource is there. Okay, so we were not able to. Let me try to delete it again because all the resources are there. It should give me this error. Okay, now you can see that the resource group is locked, so it cannot be deleted. And additionally, if you have applied uh, um, a resource group at the level of resource group, it will also come back to the below resources also. So what we'll do, I will try to delete some other. I'll see if I have a storage account. I will try to delete the storage account and then see whether I'm able to do it using the resource lock or not. So if I try to delete any account, let me. So default NSG is there, VNet is there. Okay, let me try to delete this resource. Okay. Okay, so currently I have these. Let me try to delete this thing. Okay, so this cannot be. Uh, Let me add a new storage account only. Glock K21. Okay. There is some issue with Azure. Let me go back and create. It's not even giving me proper error. Let me just sign out. I don't know why it's not allowing me to create a storage account. This is very strange. Let me do it in maybe a new resource group. Come on. Yeah, so this time it is, there is some problem with this resource group and it's not showing also. Okay, so let me see if with a different resource group. Okay, so there is some issue with that resource group, guys. So maybe what I'll do inside AZ9 900, I will create a storage account. Let me remove the resource lock from that resource group. Okay, now I don't have any resource logs. Let me go and create a storage account. I don't know what is the issue with this. Let me create. Okay, so I've created a new resource group, and now on that resource group, I will apply the lock and show that to you. Just guys, we are over time. Just give us. Okay, Jen. So IAM roles are identity and access management roles. It's like you will have an owner role, contributor role, maybe more fine-grained role like virtual machine contributor role. Now, these roles are already defined by Azure, and you can create your own roles also, your custom roles. So what happens is if like you want to give me maybe within a resource group, I have just virtual machines, and you also have a database and other XYZ things, but you want like only some people to just access virtual machines. Even if they are able to see those resources, they are not able to make any changes or maybe use them. So for that, you assign them some sort of a role. Like in the previous exercise, if you saw, I gave myself virtual machine contributor role. So what will happen inside that resource group? I will be only able to see the virtual machines and only able to like work with those virtual machine. If there are any additional resources, I won't be authorized to like make any changes or use them. Does that answer your question now, Jayant? Okay, yeah, thank. Uh, okay, we have created. Let me go to the resource. Yeah, I've created this new resource group, and I'll add a new lock. We'll call this, and I'll apply a delete lock. So you can see that this lock I've actually applied at the resource group level. Okay, I'll go to the, let it reflect, take some time so that it gets applied. Yeah, now what I'll do, I'll just try to delete this storage account. You can see, because you can see it is showing that lock K21 cannot be deleted because there is a lock that is applied at the parent level. Okay, that is why we are not allowed to delete this resource account. Okay, and once, if I will just and you can have individual locks at the resources level also. So you can see that this lock, because it was applied at the parent level, so you cannot even delete or edit this lock. But additionally, you can also create a lock. If you don't want to do it for all the resource, you can apply it just for individual resources also. So now what I'll do, I'll just remove this lock and try to delete this storage account. I'll remove this lock. It has been removed. Let me refresh. And let me go to the storage account. Yes, we are in the storage account, and then I'll just click on create, delete. So I'll just, you can see this time it's not showing any error also for me. And this should get, it will successfully delete the storage account. So that was this was the lab for uh, like applying the locks and other things. So you can see that this time we were able to delete the storage account. And if I go inside my resource group, it should be empty now. So you can see there are no more resources there. Okay. So that was for managing resource logs, and tags and other we'll see it next time when we meet on Monday. Okay, guys. So we are already over time. So if there are any questions, you can put it in the chat. Otherwise, we can like yeah, we can call off for today. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Bye.